Okay, now we're going to start going over all of the different major types of buoys. And as a reference, we're going to use the buoy reference plates listed within the light lists. So these pages I'm flipping through right here are in section 1 of the light list. And it's just a reference guide for all of the major types of buoys that you'd see within the United States. It's important to remember that this is just for the United States. There are certain ones like cardinal buoys that are totally legally valid, but are just kind of, for whatever reason, not used over here. And because this is coming out of a US publication, they're not included within the guide. But in general, a buoy is just any object that's been moored to the seabed but is still floating that can be used as an aid to navigation. If we were closer to shore, if we were in really shallow water, we would use fixed objects that are directly planted into the shore and not attached by a chain. Those are called beacons. Obviously, those are more reliable, but when you get out further out into the sea or just in deep water, you need to rely on buoys instead. It's just the more practical solution. Here is a diagram visually representing how buoys might be laid out in a certain area of the coastline, and you can see they can be used to mark channels and guide ships through them, as well as marking safe areas, danger areas, indicating junctions within channels. And then here we have a couple things that aren't buoys. You can see these beacons are in and around here are either built onto land or are sticking up out of the water but are fixed in place. And they also have this representation shown at nighttime, so you can see their light signals. Buoys will have a variety of ways of identifying themselves. Obviously, in the daytime, you can just see them visually and figure out what information they're trying to convey to you based off of their shape and their color and their placement, just off of context. At nighttime, most buoys, not all, but most will have lights, and those lights will have a certain signal to them so that you could tell what you're looking at. And then lastly, you can see here is the same situation, but as displayed on a chart. And you can see all of the symbols that charts use to depict buoys. Buoys will almost always be shown with this diamond shape that you can see all of them having there. That's just the agreed upon convention for depicting a buoy on a chart. And then that little hazy circle underneath each of them indicates that it's lighted. If you scroll all the way back up to the top where it's showing the channel buoys here, you can see it shows all of the different ways it can be depicted. A channel buoy or a channel marker, if it's not a buoy, will have just a dot for a beacon and a diamond for a buoy. And then buoys will have that little shadow underneath them if they're lighted. And beacons will have that little almost exclamation mark shape above them. If they were unlighted, as you can see right there, they just wouldn't have any of that magenta shading surrounding them. Some buoys will have bells, but there's not necessarily any consistency to that. It's just so within restricted visibility you can hear if they're particularly close to you. And what I kind of wish that this chart provided was this same situation, the same collection of buoys as they might be displayed on a radar screen, because I think that is helpful to understand. For one thing, because you would be able to then visualize this coastline as it appears on radar if you were, say, right here or somewhere near around here, and you could see all of the little blips that the buoys would form. And obviously this would be a piece of paper, but over time you might would then get the impression that these blips could move. It would also help explain that's how some buoys have radar reflectors to make them more visible on radar, and some even have radar transponders. Those are called Raycon buoys that will, if receiving a radar signal, they will send back a more complicated signal so that you can very clearly identify them on a radar screen. Those are very useful, and this safe water mark down here, they're very commonly Raycons are very often safe water marks. So you could imagine this one right here having a very distinctive radar signature that could help direct a ship inwards before it finds these buoys and follows them in. Down here you can see all of the slight distinctions that we might have in inland waters on the western rivers that might not necessarily be true for coastal areas. Though for the most part you would want to focus on this top section because that's going to be the more generalized system.